Alongside Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price. 2-minute drill following a meeting with the defensive staff, plus a few questions from Josh Heupel. Brent, got to hear from Tim Banks, and clearly he and Heupel are looking forward to getting to spring practice, getting out there and being able to evaluate in person versus watching film of last year.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear in talking to really all the coaches, but certainly it was a message from Coach Banks is that what you don't know what you have. You've watched all the cut ups, you've watched the tape, you've seen these guys work out, but to make a true evaluation, you got to get them on the practice field, get them in 11-on-11 situations, and go from there. Defensively, it's been about trying to get somewhat of a base system installed. Coach Banks said he thought he could get all of that installed in spring, and then we'll see how on the back end of spring, kind of how much they can grow out of that. But clearly, the focus is just getting the fundamentals down, which Austin I think is going to be a challenge given the fact they're going against an up-tempo offense that's going to go fast from day one because that is their fundamental.
That's what they know, and that's what they're going to do. So even though the offense will be adjusting to the speed of, and tempo of which they want to go, that's just what they're going to go from right out of the gate. So they may be going a lot faster come the end of spring practice than they go at the first, but they're still going to be trying to go fast at the first of spring practice. Got to hear from Rodney Garner and his little anecdote about, there's three things that won't lie to you. The mirror, well, that's technically not true. I've been in one of those fun houses before that made me look skinny. 2, the Bible, and 3, film. So, clearly, he's wanting to put, pen to pad and be able to put on, tape and say, look, this is what you did well today in practice. This is what you didn't do well today in practice.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing for the entire defensive group, but I think really for that defensive line group because of all the changeover that they've been through the last few years, there's a trust factor there, and there's a buy-in, and those guys have to trust. And I think that I'm sure Rodney Garner's probably rattled some cages very early when he got in because I think those guys, Austin, didn't have someone kind of with a boot in the rear end every day for the last 6 or 7 months. Jeremy Pruitt coached him on the practice field, but I don't know, outside of the practice field, what all was going on there because he had head coaching responsibilities. So
It's
I
like
think
having a substitute teacher every day.
yeah, that's exactly right. Great analogy. So I think there's been a lot of talk about accountability with that group. And I think that's something that Rodney Garner has preached. I think that if anybody who knows Rodney Garner for the last 30 years knows accountability is at the top of the list. He's going to give you everything he's got, but you have to give it to him. And if you don't, then you're going to have some issues. So I think there's been some learning lessons there off the field, which has been good for this group. And then we'll see what they look like when they get on the field and get going.
Mike Eckler told the story about running basically a marathon, being dropped off on the side of the interstate outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, and running basically 27 and a half miles and almost got there before a cop said, hey, you can't run on the side of the interstate. And he had to, get carted back in the last 4 miles. I'm trying to figure out, like, what would that be if we did that here? Like, if we went and dropped Eckler off, like, would that be like what road? What's 27 and a half miles from Neyland Stadium?
It's a long ways. It's a lot longer than I want to think about.
And here's the thing about running that here. Well, more impressive here because there's hills. In Lincoln, Nebraska, it's flat.
No, you're exactly right. But it's interesting when you look. Willie Martinez is a very studious person, very level-headed. He's got intensity. Don't get me wrong, but he's about the process and all of those things. And Rodney Garner's a veteran guy, and Tim Banks doesn't seem like he's a teacher. So they need a juice guy. Well, they found their juice guy because I think Mike Eckler's got enough juice for everybody on that defensive staff. I thought it was interesting in him talking about his passion for special teams and kind of how he felt like once the 10th assistant came into play, hey, here's my way to get into the Power Five. I love special teams, and I want to be a special teams guy. That's not to say he's not going to help with linebackers because he will, Austin. But to me, it came across he was very much a special teams guy first and then an aide to the linebackers as opposed to a guy coaching linebackers who happens to work special teams.
I agree. I thought his kind of comment about you get one shot at it. There's not a second down. There's not a third down. With special teams, there's one down. To make your impact. I thought that was a neat way to look at special teams. Willie Martinez clearly happy to be back. Clearly, really enjoyed his time around here the first time. His son Will graduated from Catholic, went to Tennessee, is now scouting for the New Orleans Saints. So like this is something where it's a family affair with football with Coach Martinez, and he and his wife been married for like I mean it's some crazy. They've been married
High,
since they've been
high
like,
school
high
sweetheart.
school sweethearts. Yeah, I mean like this is like
Crazy.
18. Um, you know, they're happy to be back here.
Yeah, no doubt. They've kept in touch with a lot of friends through the years in Knoxville and have jumped right back in and been reacquainted and gotten to be back around some of those friends. I think it was important. He enjoyed his time here. Now look, I mean, he had a couple seasons where they won 9 games, I mean, he was a part of some success here that Tennessee hasn't had a lot of. But yeah, he's happy to be back. I think the other thing too that jumped out to me overall, there's several questions asked to Banks and and to Coach Brian, the linebackers coach, about Henry T and Creveris Crouch, and where do they factor in? I thought that it was a little bit of a pointed message. It wasn't a disparaging remark to them, but that there was going to be no recruiting of them today publicly. It was very much we're focused on who we have. If you want to be here, we'd love to have you. If you don't want to be here, okay, good luck to you. We're going to focus in on what we have. I thought there was a little bit of a subtle message in that about, hey, it's about us right now and the guys who want to show up every day and go to work out, not about who we might have or who we might get or anything like that.
Well, I agree, especially when Crouch was back in the building there at one point, but apparently that has changed over the last couple of weeks. And I'm with them. At some point, you're either with us or you're not, and they're past the time of being with them. These kids have had multiple weeks to where they could have thought about it and toyed with it and analyzed it, and the rubber met the road to me probably a week or two ago when those kids need to be back here and be a part of this team in a functioning way, and they're not apparently. I knew Henry wasn't back. Surprised by Crouch just because he was in the building there at one point when Heupel got hired and was working out with the team. So to me, that's probably the most interesting team note coming out of this Monday. He's Brent Hubbs. I'm Austin Price. We'll have more coverage on the General's Quarters.